In the dense, jungle-choked mountains of Southeast Asia, a transport plane, painted in the unassuming colors of a commercial carrier, lifts heavily into the humid air. It carries no passengers in the traditional sense. Its cargo bay is filled with sacks of rice, live chickens, and ammunition. On another day, a similar plane, bearing different markings, banks hard to avoid ground fire, the staccato sound of bullets tearing through its aluminium skin. Somewhere else, a crackle of static over a radio carries the strained voice of a downed pilot, calling for rescue from a hidden valley no official map would ever acknowledge. These were the daily realities for the pilots and crew of the world's most secret airline. An airline so vast it operated a fleet larger than many national carriers, with thousands of employees and a global reach. Yet it had no ticket counters, no commercial routes, and its existence was officially denied by the United States government. This was Air America, the CIA's airline that wasn't supposed to exist. To understand this story, one must first understand the name itself. Air America was a convenient label for a complex and deliberately confusing web of companies. The CIA, in its need for plausible deniability, created a series of shell corporations and holding companies designed to obscure ownership and operational control. The airline began its life as Civil Air Transport, or CAT. It was later officially named Air America in 1959. But it also operated under names like Air Asia, which was its huge maintenance and repair depot in Taiwan, and Southern Air Transport. In the world of intelligence, mobility is power. The ability to control your own transportation network provides an unparalleled strategic advantage. A former senior intelligence officer, quoted by Robbins, laid out the logic perfectly. If I were curious about troubled areas and wanted to get a feel of what was going on, there are two things I'd want. The first is information, the second is transportation, because it's the key to everything else. Owning an airline gave the CIA both. Control over the skyways meant control over the battlefield, especially in undeveloped regions like Laos, which had few roads and was dominated by impassable mountains and jungles. An airdrop could deliver rice to a starving village to win their loyalty, or it could deliver rifles and mortars to a secret army. A helicopter could insert a team of commandos behind enemy lines under the cover of darkness, and it could be the only hope for a wounded soldier or a downed pilot. The sheer diversity of the fleet spoke to the breadth of its mission. The CIA's Air Force was a hodgepodge of whatever worked for the job at hand. It had lumbering C-130 Hercules and C-123 provider transports for heavy lifting, sleek Boeing 727s for moving personnel long distances, and nimble Cessnas and Pilatus Porters capable of taking off and landing on impossibly short, rugged dirt strips. And, of course, it had helicopters, squadrons of them, flying into the teeth of danger day after day. The roots of Air America stretch back to the end of World War II and the legendary figure of Major General Claire Lee Chennault. The gruff, brilliant commander of the famous Flying Tigers who had defended China against the Japanese found himself without a war after 1945. With his partner, Whiting Willauer, he saw an opportunity in the chaos of post-war China. They formed the CNRRA Air Transport in 1947 to fly relief supplies into the country's ravaged interior. This quickly evolved into a commercial airline in 1948 called Civil Air Transport, or CAT. CAT's initial mission was legitimate, but as the Chinese Civil War raged, it increasingly flew dangerous missions in support of Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces against Mao Zedong's communists. When the nationalists were defeated and fled to Taiwan in 1949, CAT was bankrupt and on the verge of collapse. It was then that the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency saw its chance. The CIA needed a deniable air asset in Asia, and CAT, with its experienced anti-communist pilots and established infrastructure, was the perfect candidate. In 1950, the agency orchestrated a secret buyout. It created a Delaware holding company called Pacific Corporation, which then purchased all of CAT's assets. The name Civil Air Transport was kept for a time, but by 1959, the part of the operation focused on clandestine activities was officially renamed Air America. The true scale of Air America was a closely guarded secret, so well kept that even the director of the CIA himself couldn't get a straight answer. In a now famous anecdote, CIA Director Richard Helms, frustrated by the opaque accounting and sprawling nature of the operation, once demanded of his subordinates, "How many airplanes does the CIA own?" This deliberate confusion was the airline's greatest defense. It operated in plain sight with offices in cities across Asia, but its true purpose was hidden behind layers of corporate bureaucracy and plausible deniability. At its peak during the Vietnam War, the airline employed over 20,000 people, including more than 1,000 pilots, and operated a fleet of several hundred aircraft. The airline's unofficial motto, "Anything, anywhere, anytime," was a literal description of its job. The list of tasks performed by Air America pilots reads like a spy thriller. They conducted illegal overflights of China to drop agents and spy equipment. They ran infills and exfills, inserting and retrieving commandos and intelligence agents from deep within enemy territory. They dropped millions of propaganda leaflets and supplied and supported rebel armies fighting proxy wars for the United States. All of this was done with a remarkable degree of financial independence. The airline generated its own revenue by flying contract missions for the US Agency for International Development and other government bodies, which provided a perfect cover. Furthermore, the CIA's Director of Central Intelligence had the authority to bypass normal government accounting procedures for proprietaries, meaning Air America's finances were almost entirely opaque. By the end of the 1960s, its assets were valued at over $50 million, a massive, profitable, and utterly deniable corporation built for war. While Air America operated across Southeast Asia, its heart and soul were in the tiny, landlocked kingdom of Laos. Between 1962 and 1973, the CIA waged a massive, clandestine war there against the communist Pathet Lao and their North Vietnamese allies. It was a conflict the American public knew nothing about, and Air America was its logistical and military backbone. Because the Geneva Accords of 1962 officially declared Laos a neutral country, the US military was forbidden from operating there. Air America, as a civilian entity, had no such restrictions. The pilots who flew upcountry in Laos faced some of the most challenging flying conditions on Earth. They operated from a secret base at Long Ting, a valley surrounded by limestone karsts, landing on short, steep airstrips that were often little more than a flattened patch of dirt on a mountainside, which were frequently under enemy fire. Air America also played a vital, if less central, role in the more public conflicts in Vietnam and Cambodia. In Vietnam, where the US military had a massive official presence, the airline served as a crucial logistical support system. It flew supplies and personnel for various government agencies and conducted clandestine missions that the military couldn't or wouldn't do. As the war drew to a close, Air America's planes were instrumental in the chaotic final days, flying desperate evacuation missions. In neighboring Cambodia, the airline's involvement was, as Robbins describes it, a hair-raising stint. After the 1970 coup, the country descended into a brutal civil war. Air America was once again called upon to support the anti-communist side, flying supplies into besieged cities and conducting reconnaissance missions. Though smaller in scale, these operations were incredibly difficult, especially when you consider that the communist Khmer Rouge regime controlled much of the countryside. As the Vietnam War wound down, the need for a massive clandestine airline began to fade. The final defining moment for Air America came in April 1975 during the fall of Saigon. As North Vietnamese tanks closed in on the city, Air America pilots flew heroic round-the-clock missions, evacuating American personnel, South Vietnamese officials, and desperate civilians. One of its helicopter pilots famously landed on the roof of an apartment building to rescue the CIA's deputy station chief and his family in a dramatic last-minute extraction immortalized in photographs. With the conflict in Southeast Asia over, the CIA's vast air proprietary was an expensive and politically inconvenient relic of a bygone era. The process of dismantling it began. In what Christopher Robbins fittingly titles the selling out arc of his book, the agency began to quietly liquidate its assets. Planes were sold off, bases were closed, and employees were let go. Air America officially ceased operations in 1976. Its sister companies and holding corporations were either sold to private investors or dissolved. The ghost that had haunted the skies of Asia for over 2 decades simply vanished. The legacy of Air America is a paradox. It was both a myth and a finely tuned mechanism of war. It was a private company that allowed a government spy agency to fight a secret war on an industrial scale, a war that was hidden from the American public and Congress for years. It was an organization so shrouded in secrecy that its own director couldn't tally its fleet, yet its impact on the course of history in Southeast Asia was immense and undeniable. The men who flew for it were not official soldiers, but their casualty rate was higher than that of many frontline military units. They were civilians doing a soldier's job, operating in a grey world of moral ambiguity, driven by a mixture of duty, adventure, and profit. The story of Air America is a stark reminder of the lengths to which a superpower will go to protect its influence in the shadows. As Robbins concludes, it was part of a web of dozens of CIA airlines. You won't find the logo anywhere. A testament to an invisible empire of the air that, for a generation, shaped the fate of nations. But what do you think? Does the CIA operate something similar today? Was it even necessary during the Cold War? Did it have to be so classified? Let us know your thoughts and more in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.